In the first study, we looked at God's surprisingly big plan that he created you and me out of love. Because God is love. He's a community of the Father, Son and Spirit loving one another. And we saw that love, by definition, is expansive, it is overflowing, it is generous. And that's why God made you and me, because he wants more sons and daughters to enjoy his love. And we also saw that's why God made a good world, a world that is so good that the Son, the second person of the Trinity, would become human permanently. Yes, still God, but also always human. Creation is that good. And we saw in the last study that Jesus is Lord of all, and he will be Lord of all one day. And so day by day, even today, I want to make him Lord of all over everything that I can in my life, in everything that I do. But of course, that's not the end of the story, what we were looking at. Because we know that the world today is a mess because of sin. I'm a mess, and I know that you're a mess because of sin. But God is still God, and God is still love. So what will happen when sin and love collide? Well, let me give you the bad news first before I answer that in full. And the bad news is that the Bible and Jesus are absolutely crystal clear about God's wrath, his anger. Jesus says in Matthew 10, "Don't fear men, but be very afraid of the one who can throw you body and soul into hell." In Romans 1, Paul says the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness of men. And by the end of the Bible, in Revelation 19, we read that Jesus himself will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God Almighty. What is our big problem as human beings? It's not global warming, it's not terrorism, it's not the next pandemic. Our big problem is that God is angry with us. Jesus again puts it this way in John 3. He says, unless we trust God's Son, God's wrath remains on us. It's on us and it will remain unless we trust God's Son. Does that all make you feel uncomfortable? I think it should. And the surprise, you see, is that the Bible seems to say that God's wrath is a good thing. I mean, how can an angry God be a good thing? How can it be good that the creator of the universe is angry? Well, let me try to answer that from looking from the other side of the mirror. What would it say about God if he were not angry at sin? You know, God made a good world, and for him not to be angry at the mess we've made would be to say, I don't care about the world I've made. God made us to enjoy his love, and for him not to be angry at our turning our backs on him would be to say, I don't really love them all that much after all. You see, for God to sit back and watch me hurting myself would be to say, meh, I'm not going to get involved. Go ahead, make a mess of your life. But God is love. And true love always gets angry when the person you love is being destroyed. True love always acts when the person you love is hurting themselves. I mean, think about it. What parent looks on disinterested when their child is playing with power tools or power saw or playing with fire? A loving God must be angry at anything that hurts the ones he loves. And you see, God's love is that good. God is not sentimental. He doesn't just have vague feelings towards you. He doesn't just have happy thoughts towards the world he's made. No, God's love is real and beautiful and strong, and he acts when we're hurt, and he acts when we're hurting ourselves. And you see, this is the problem with sin. Sin is a form of self-harm. We're choosing to turn away from all that is good, from the source of pure goodness. And when you turn away from perfection, the only way is down. And we're choosing something that will hurt us when we sin, even though we don't think so at the time. You see, so, I mean, what does sin look like? On the surface, sin looks like doing the wrong stuff, or thinking the wrong stuff, or feeling the wrong stuff. But why do I do that? Because get under the skin, take it down a layer, I do that because I'm selfish, or I'm proud, or I'm idolatrous. But why do I do that? Well, take it down another layer and you get to the heart of the problem, the heart of sin. I sin because of what I love. That is, I love me, not God. I love a creature rather than a creator. I think that this thing will make me happy today. And I love that. And so sin at heart is self-love. So yes, I do the wrong stuff. Yes, because I'm selfish. But that's because at heart I love myself more than I love God. And at heart, all sin is a lack of love for God. All sin is that I don't love him with all my heart and soul and mind and strength, and I don't love my neighbour as myself. I do what Adam and Eve did every day. I turn from a God who is love to my own thing. I turn from a God who is love, the very definition of love, the very reason we know what love looks like, what love is. I turn from a God who knows what is best for me and do what I think is best for myself, which means I make a mess of my life. Of course, it doesn't feel like that at the time. I do what I do because I love what I do, but I'm making a mess. I'm stepping away from perfect love. Which is why my self-love is a form of self-harm. I press the self-destruction button on myself every day. And we've screwed up this good world that God has made. And you see, God's wrath or his anger at sin, at my sin, at your sin, is not because he switches off his love. No, God's anger at sin is the most loving thing God could do. His anger at sin, at my sin, is the perfection of his love. It is my only hope. My only hope is that his white-hot purity, his love, will one day burn away all my sin and evil and suffering, the effects of the fall, all the ways that creation is fractured, all the way that myself, my being is fractured. My only hope is that in his anger he will deal with that. And the gospel, of course, is that he does deal with that. And he does it by pouring out his wrath, not on me, but on his son. I deserve his wrath, but it would burn me up. I deserve hell, and hell is real. But Jesus on the cross took that from me so that I can enjoy the love of the Father and the Son and the Spirit without even a hint of wrath. And that's the gospel. The gospel is that my problem of sin and God's good anger at my sin is dealt with by God within God. In other words, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit together deal with my sin problem at immense cost. They deal with it so completely that the Father can now see me as his Son in his Son, as pure and beautiful and spotless as Jesus, and loved in him. And that's the gospel. At last, I can enjoy a relationship with the Father, Son, and Spirit that I was made to enjoy. At last, I can enjoy being the Father's daughter or son and enjoy with him the good world that he's made. And that's the gospel. It is about a God who does everything, and I just receive it. My problem of sin is dealt with by a loving God within God, and that's the gospel. There is nothing for me to prove. There's nothing for me to do. There's nothing for me to prove to this God. I don't have to prove that I deserved it or I'm good enough or I will try harder. I just have to receive it. And that's the gospel. Buddha's last 3 words were strive without ceasing. Jesus' last 3 words were it is finished. Which would you rather have?